Good morning. My name is Shawn Graham, and I am pleased to be able to present to you today my paper, Electric Archaeology, Archaeology in and Archaeology of Second Life. And I would like to thank the session organizers, and especially Colleen, for giving me this opportunity today. Archaeology is about material culture, about exploring the human condition, and not necessarily in the past, through how we create and manipulate objects. In recent years, the power of computers has opened up new universes for exploration, places where individuals create the worlds around them. This paper discusses my archaeological explorations and thoughts in the current leading virtual world, Second Life. This world deserves archaeological study, and perhaps it needs archaeological study in that it is nothing but pure construction of will and imagination. So this kind of virtual world is really just the latest in a long continuum of virtual worlds, extending back in past to the Hanging Gardens of Babylon to, more recently, Disneyland in Florida. Humans have been creating fantastical worlds for many different purposes, with simple entertainment not necessarily the prime motivation for millennia. Building on these observations, I then will discuss my own attempts to alter this world for archaeological outreach, a reusable archaeological excavation. So, what is Second Life? Second Life is a persistent online world created and maintained by Linden Labs, a San Francisco-based company. It's not a game, though games may be played in it, nor is it a trivial social interaction site. It is a world hosted over a number of computer servers where every object, structure, and simulated acre of land lives in a database. If something is created there, it will still be there tomorrow. Second Life is a world that grows. Users of the world, visitors of the world, residents, download client software onto their own computer, which then takes the information in the database and renders it into a 3D display. The computer enables a through-the-looking-glass experience, where the user becomes embodied in this digital world in a customizable avatar, a digital representation of himself. And the experience is such that new users quickly stop saying things like, "My avatar just went into that reconstruction of the Sistine Chapel," to "I went into the Sistine Chapel." It allows them to project their own will and personality into this world. So it's immersive in a way that traditional archaeological virtual reality has never been able to achieve, which is primarily a result of the ability to use avatars to explore both within and without the structures. Users of Second Life may purchase or rent land within the Second Life universe. Every user has access to building tools which allow them to build structures, vehicles, artworks, or impossibilities, MCE Escher-like vistas. Each object built in Second Life can also have short programs or scripts attached to it that govern how the object behaves. One notable simulation inside Second Life is called Svarga, S-V-A-R-G-A, and it uses this ability to program the ability to reproduce into virtual organisms, so artificial life. Second Life is also open to the internet, which allows users to build interactive whiteboards on which regular web pages or slideshows, or even real-time data such as weather updates overlaid on a globe, can be displayed. It's slowly becoming what some have called the Web 3D. Many of its features owe their inspiration to the Neal Stephenson novel Snow Crash and its concept of the multiverse. Now, I just want to make the point that as archaeologists, we never discover the past. We are only creating an interpretation of it. That's not a very contentious thing to say. However, our synthetic worlds that we create as archaeologists are just as synthetic as the worlds that are created in computers. Now, stay with me here for a moment. Scholars of computer games have developed many typologies of games, depending on whether they are ludological, which is an ugly word, but means just focused on play, or narratological, based on the story. So that this is how they classify these online worlds or video games more generally. But a more recent typology of games has been developed that considers games, whether computer games or ball games or chess, based on spatial movement. And if you email me, I can give you the reference. Broadly, this open-ended typology depends on classification of movement along 5 axes: space, time, player structure, control, and the rules. And each of those categories can be further broken down. But right now I want to focus on space and time. By considering movement as the basis for the typology, it focuses attention on how the game treats time and space. And physicists tell you that space and time are the same thing, so movement through one is movement through the other. And movement in time is what archaeologists are trained to do, and historians, if only in their minds. And this is an important point. The past that archaeologists study has no independent existence outside the mind of the archaeologist. So in that sense, it is a synthetic world created by humans. And what is particularly good about games, another kind of synthetic world, is that a very good game teaches the player how to project his or her mind into the game, their sense of self. In the same way, the blind person's stick extends their sense of self to the very end of the stick. So a very good game is immersive. A really good interpretation, archaeologically, should also make you feel immersed. And what makes the synthetic worlds existing by the grace of computers compelling is that they practice this good enough reality. They create this willing suspension of disbelief. Ed Castronova writes, "I would argue that the philosopher's stone that allows the base metals of computer technology to be refined into the precious gold of immersive experience is just one single thing: game. A game perspective focuses all thought and research on the user's subjectivity and well-being. It insists on immediate usability, it thrives on widened access and multiple users, and it generates a willing suspension of disbelief without which genuine immersion cannot happen. Better games mean better VR and for more people. But there is no such thing as virtual reality, and there never was. There are only inherited and synthetic realities, and they are only differentiated by how they appear before our senses, either as a largely unmodified reality that has been in existence for a while, think nature or Earth, or as a fairly recent creation from the whole cloth, think silicon or graphics or 3D. And this is what archaeology tries to do, especially when we're talking about public archaeology. It tries to create a kind of synthetic world for the public, a world of the past. Video games, through different kinds of movement, allow for the suspension of disbelief and for the projection of the user's sense of self into the world. So our task as archaeologists interested in the persuasive power of games and online worlds is to reconcile these two kinds of synthetic worlds. So how do we do that? Well, we consider what's going on in the rules. Games and game worlds carry their own kind of rhetoric. Playing the game teaches you how the game works. If a game or online world represents a kind of past experience to you, it does so using an argument structured in its own codes or procedures, what Ian Bogost calls a procedural rhetoric. So that is one level that archaeology can examine in Second Life, the procedural rhetoric behind reconstructions, such as Roma SPQR, or indeed Çatalhöyük. Another level is on the digital material culture that people create inside Second Life. Wandering around in Second Life, you start to notice a couple of things. One is, of course, the huge variety of objects that residents create. Another is the way that, in this world where it is possible to build nearly anything, certain common themes keep repeating themselves in this material virtual culture. There seems to be a common grammar of what to build and how to build it. And this is what I meant by the procedural rhetoric encoding certain ways of expressing yourself. Perhaps the tools that Linden Labs provide in themselves foster certain modes of expression and channel our ways of thinking inside that world. So if this world continues to grow in popularity and people continue to choose to spend increasing amounts of time within it, if the world itself is channeling the way we think, then here is a place where archaeology can help to uncover these modes, these rhetorics, and make a difference. Now, I've spent a great deal of this presentation trying to make an argument for why Second Life should be studied from an archaeological point of view in and of itself. There is, of course, another way in which Second Life is of value to archaeologists, and that is as a place where it can enhance our teaching and learning. When you consider that students learn to become archaeologists through a combination of lectures and hands-on training, and that to excavate something is to destroy it, then this really puts a bind on how we teach archaeology, because we are really loath to allow students to get in there on real archaeology, at least in the vast numbers that are being funneled through our first year introductory archaeology courses, because of it's a limited resource and there isn't the time, money, or resources to allow our students to make mistakes, to let them to figure out and learn from that. So this is where Second Life could make a big difference. In an effort to put my money where my mouth is, or at least somebody else's money where my mouth is, I persuaded Robert Welch University to obtain a parcel of land in Second Life, and I set out to create a virtual excavation. The process of that is documented on my blog, electricarchaeologist.wordpress.com. And what I've tried to do here is to use the metaphors that we use when we talk about excavation, when we talk about layers and single contexts and so on, and make that real in Second Life. So each context in my excavation is its own primitive, that is, its own building block, and I layer them up one on top of the other. I encode in each primitive a script that, when the student touches on it, causes that layer to peel away so that the student can see the next layer. When they encounter an artifact or a post hole fill or bones or whatever, you know what I mean. These are more primitives, and inside each one of those is another script that calls out to a website, perhaps to opencontext.org, perhaps to ostiaantica.org, but to a repository of archaeological data, and pulls in a picture of what the student has found. The student comes to this site, records each context with its own identification number, and uses the online tool of nabonidus.org to record it. And that's Nabonidus is based on the MOLAS recording sheets, the Museum of London Archaeological Service. So they build up their own picture. They're able to, or they should be able to, produce Harris matrices from this and get a flavor of what's involved intellectually with reconstructing the past from archaeological data. It's not perfect. It looks kind of hokey, but then I'm not a builder. I'm still learning how to do this effectively. But my aim here with this prototype is to capture the essence, capture the ideas, and make it work like that. So I invite you, next time you're in Second Life, come on over to this virtual excavation, play with it, see what works, see what's problematic for you, leave us a note critiquing it, and I will take on board your critiques and try and make the best virtual excavation possible. If I've done nothing else here this morning, I hope that I've at least persuaded you to take a look at Second Life and other online worlds, and do it with a critical archaeological eye, and think about what these worlds imply. Thank you very much.